Did you ever wonder about the life of a tree?
If trees could see, what would it be?
The passage of time, our history. A unique tree we especially chose. An oak tree so named for Carolyn Rowe.
Now first we had to determine its age.
A tree so humongous, how could we gauge?
To a computer, we went to Google a site.
And lo and behold, it gave us an answer so right. Measure circumference in centimeters, 1.5 meters from the ground.
Circumference, we remember, is the distance around.
With meter sticks and string, we headed to that tree
And measured and re-measured not once, twice, but times 3.
From there we divided the number by 2.5 and discovered the age of that tree. Sakes alive! 602 centimeters, the circumference of that oak.
So 241 years was the age. That's no joke.
It so happened we were celebrating National Pie Day that day.
And the diameter of that tree, we could easily say, take circumference and divide it by pi.
Its diameter was over 191 centimeters wide.
Finally, our task was now complete.
We came back to the class to enjoy a sweet treat.
Cookies with pie we joyfully ate.
And knowing our math skills were certainly first rate.
So now that you know that oak is really old, sit back and relax as the story is told.
An acorn falls to the ground.
Given warmth, moisture, and a bit of a miracle, it can give birth to a tree.
Every acorn on every oak tree carries within it the miniature of another tree to be. The seed may be scattered by wind, rain, animals, or even people. Through time, the acorn becomes nestled in the ground. In the springtime, when the soil is warmed by the sun and watered by rain showers, the seed sprouts.
A tiny plant begins to grow inside the acorn.
It uses the food stored inside the seed.
A root breaks through the seed coat and grows downward into the soil. Roots anchor the plant in the soil and take in water. The first seeds grow. Stem grows upward and the leaves unfold.
This little oak can now make food on its own.
Madison Academy's honored oak is born. I want to plant a tree for a good shake. Trees make wood for building houses. The people make houses. They build houses for us.
Trees are good for food like apples and nuts.
I like trees because they give you oxygen.
Reagan, what's your favorite time of the year?
Spring break,
And why do you like the spring?
because I have the favorite colors in spring.
Tanner, what's your favorite time of the year?
In summer,
Why do you like the summer?
because it is so bright in the summer, and I love the different colors, and the trees and leaves are green, bright green.
Gracie, what's your favorite time of the year?
Fall,
Why do you like the fall?
because you dress up and get candy.
Cy, what's your favorite time of the year?
Winter,
Why do you like the winter?
because it's Christmas and you get presents.
Madison, what's your favorite time of the year?
Spring,
What do you like to do in spring?
play baseball. I think I'll never see. A home lovely like a tree. A tree looks at God all day. It lifts their arms to pray. Tree has no hair. Birds in her hair. Those are made. They both like me. Only God can make a tree.
Florida's history is very interesting. Florida was first discovered by Juan Ponce de Leon in 1513, and it remained under Spanish control until the end of the 7 Years' War. Then it became the possession of the Great Kingdom of Great Britain.
Although our tree was not around during Ponce de Leon's visit, our tree has seen many events happen in Florida's history. It is believed that our tree began its life somewhere around the year 1767.
In 1783, after the American Revolution, Great Britain gave Florida back to Spain. At this time, our oak tree would have been about 16 years, already on its way to be a well-established tree. In 1812, Florida was invaded by U.S. Patriot troops because of disagreements over runaway slaves that were being protected by the Seminole Indians in Florida.
The Transcontinental Treaty was signed on February 22, 1819, and took effect after it was ratified, which means approved by the Spanish government in 1821. This meant that the U.S. received Florida as a territory.
Andrew Jackson served as the military governor of a newly acquired territory, but only for a short while. In 1822, the United States merged East Florida and part of West Florida into the Florida Territory.
William Pope Duval became the first official governor of the Florida Territory, and soon afterwards the capital was established at Tallahassee, but only after removing a Seminole tribe from the land.
Madison County, which was named after President James Madison, was constituted in 1827, making it the 14th county in the state of Florida. The oak tree would be around 60 years old by now.
There was no superior court back then, and sheriffs and marshals were very sparse. Taxes were high, crime was heavy, and many people did not trust the government.
Around 1832, San Pedro was designated as the county seat of Madison County. The first courthouse was built there. It was a one-room building.
The sheriff, the clerk of circuit court, and the judge, who were the only officers of the county at the time, met here and conducted their government affairs.
The United States Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, requiring all Native Americans to move west of the Mississippi River.
Prompted a war in Florida by the Seminole Indians in 1835. Because of this, there were many Indian attacks in Madison County.
The settlers of San Pedro Bay moved their community farther north, what is today known as Madison. They first called their new community Newtown, but later the name was changed to Madison.
For protection from the Indians, the settlers built a blockade structure like a fort. The fort was used as a courthouse from about 1838 to the 1840s. It was located where the Madison City Park is today.
During the Seminole Indian War, many Seminole chiefs were captured, including Osceola, who later died of illness.
The Seminoles were eventually forced to migrate west, and almost all were gone by the time Florida became the 27th state on March 3, 1845.
By this time, the oak tree would be approaching its 100th birthday. Soon the Civil War would begin, and our tree would stand firm to see even more history in the making.
Let's stop for a moment and consider what the Civil War may have looked like from the oak tree's perspective.
The Civil War? Sure, I remember the Civil War. After all, I was only 94 years old when it started. It was the bloodiest conflict I've ever seen. As I recall, that January marked a harsh winter. Yep, a lot happened that January. First day, in fact, a proclamation was signed that freed the slaves. I remember them running around me, climbing my branches, pronouncing their freedom. But 9 days later, my homeland pronounced it was seceded from the mother country. Then, on April 12th, 1861, not but 4 months later, the war broke out. The rejoicing slaves soon cried tears of sorrow. Love-struck boys left their sweethearts to go to the front. I watched as wives and children said their tearful goodbyes. I can remember when those soldiers were 8-year-old boys climbing in my branches, but now they marched to war, rows and rows of uniformed men. Some of them carried the wounded, no doubt on their way to the Warlaw Smith Hospital. Some of the officers would gather around my roots, and I could overhear their battle plans and see their maps. I remember a young man planting a flag, shouting about how this new flag marked our independence and was a sure way to win the war.
This picture shows some of Madison County's Civil War veterans.
In 1929, the Great Depression hit our country, including the people of Madison.
Many families in Madison lived on farms and raised, grew, or made what they needed.
There was hardly any money around, so people would trade items.
For example, a person could trade in their homemade butter for a pair of shoes.
To make their crops last, many families canned their food. Some even canned their meats.
People in Madison, just like the rest of USA, learned how to make do with what they had. Those who were fortunate enough to own cars couldn't afford to buy gasoline anymore.
So they would take the wheels off of the car and put them on the wagon instead. This made a smoother ride for the family.
Most houses did not have running water, indoor plumbing, telephones, or even electricity. This was true for Ray Charles, too.
Even though he was not born in Madison County, he moved to Greenville when he was just a tiny baby.
Mr. Charles was a young boy during the Great Depression when times were hard.
By the age of 7, he was completely blind, but he still found someone to take the time to teach him to play the piano.
Even through rough times, Ray Charles grew up to be a famous singer and piano player.
Georgia on My Mind is just one of Ray Charles' popular songs.
Times were hard for people in the United States.
A lot of families lived simple lives in Madison, so when the Great Depression happened, they knew how to survive.
Who knows? Maybe a few of them stopped to take a rest underneath the shade of this tree.
Maybe the tree reminded some of them to stretch out their arms like branches and hug their families during the tough times.
Or maybe someone stopped underneath all those green leaves and looked up to the sky, knowing that God has taken care of this tree, so He will surely take care of them.
In 1937, a very special lady was born. Mrs. Carolyn Rowe was born on May 11, 1937. She was raised in Greenville, Florida. She attended Greenville Elementary, Greenville Middle, and Greenville High School. After graduating from high school, Mrs. Rowe headed to Florida State University. In 1959, she earned a B.S. in elementary education.
The 1940s, from the tree's perspective.
I have seen a lot of changes over the last 244 years. One of these changes has been electricity. When Tri-County flipped the switch in 1940, Madison County entered the modern age. This rural area changed from lanterns to electric lights and from horse and wagon to electric motors. When Tri-County came into business, they started cutting down my neighbors and using them as light poles to hold up light lines. I was very glad when they didn't cut me down. Since Tri-County did not cut me down, I am here today to tell my story.
World War II officially started in 1939 when Adolf Hitler invaded Poland. The U.S. wanted to stay out of the war, but 3 American ships were escorting British merchant vessels when they were sunk by German U-boats. On April 11, 1941, the Niblack dropped depth charges into the water on a German U-boat. December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor.
Madison County has been home to many heroes. One such hero is Colin P. Kelly. Oh, I remember that boy. He went to school here in Madison. I saw him pass by every once in a while. But then, one year, he left. Maybe 1940? Well, otherwise, I heard he went to a place called March Army Air Force Base. He was part of the 14th Bomber Squadron. His B-17 bomber was put on fire. But what he did that was so heroic was that he ordered the others to bail out of the plane before him. Sadly, he wasn't able to escape in time. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't have been able to do that. That's why Colin P. Kelly was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross.
The Four Freedoms Monument was dedicated in honor of Captain Colin P. Kelly. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the president at the time, dedicated the monument. The four freedoms are freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. The monument was put up on June 6, 1944. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends.
Another Madison County hero is Dale Leslie. Dale Leslie was born on September 20th, 1917. Then on September 27, 1942, he had a mission to fly in, locate, and return captured Marines on Guadalcanal. He was shot down and faced 40 days and 40 nights without food or water. He made his way back to Henderson Airfield. After the war, he served 32 years as the county clerk of my county. He died in 1980.
May 7, 1945, Germany surrendered. The Enola Gay dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Its name was Little Boy. The second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. Its name was Fat Man.
I thought the war had made its way to Madison County in 1947 when the Great Tobacco Warehouse exploded. The American Sumatra Tobacco Company warehouse exploded on January 25, 1947. The blast was so large it shook my limbs and blew all the windows out of the courthouse. The warehouse was located where the courthouse annex is today.
Another frightening experience for me was the Great Flood of Madison County. Picture it. Water. Rising water. On March 19, 1948, Norton Creek flooded. Most of the rivers and lakes escaped their banks. That spring, new lakes formed on the highways. People traveled by boat and tractor. Everything was wet. I saw turtles, moccasins, and logs floating everywhere. Early crops were washed away. Madison was an island.
Miss Rowe's first teaching job was at Lee Elementary School. She taught there for 3 years and then went to Madison Primary School for 4 years. Later, she would join the Madison Academy staff. She taught in the old schoolhouse first grade. Miss Rowe began as head of school at Madison Academy in 1969.
In 1975, Madison Academy moved into their new building for the years. Mrs. Rowe taught second grade and was head of school. She would eventually serve as head for 13 years.
In 2002, Miss Rowe decided to retire after 38 years of teaching. Since Miss Rowe was one of the first head of school at Madison Academy,
The live oak tree that welcomes parents and students was dedicated in her honor. They named the tree the Carolyn Rowe Oak. This tree is officially registered in the Live Oak Society. We asked Miss Rowe what she remembers most about the tree while at Madison Academy, and she said the picnic lunches that they would always have under the tree.
In the summer of 2010, Curtis and Emmett Smith of Madison Marble Works crafted this beautiful monument that now rests at the base of our beloved oak tree. This monument will make it possible for future generations to share in the story of this grand old oak tree and Mrs. Carolyn Rowe.
The first grade class learned a song that was made up about the wonderful oak tree.
Please listen to the words to our song.
They express how we feel about this grand old tree at our school.